Hello class, this is Dr. Yuk here. I hope that you guys are doing well. I'm thinking about you and I'm sorry that we can't meet in person, but I want you to know that, I know that this is a very scary time, but all your teachers at TJ are here for you still, and you can reach me through email if you have any questions, or if you're having any technical difficulties or anything like that, just please let me know. I want to do everything I can to make this as simple as possible. I know it's going to be difficult to make some of these changes and to do everything online, but we're going to do the best we can here. And with your help, I think this could be a really cool, fun learning experience for all of us. So, like I said, I know that this is a really scary time, but everything's going to be okay. Everything's cool. We're going to be all right. Business as usual. So anyways, Haroun and the Sea of Stories. This is a quick review of the book we're reading. I'm going to go through the first couple chapters just to review for you here. So, it was written by Salman Rushdie. He's a British Indian novelist, and he grew up in India but lives in New York City now. He's written many famous novels and had a very interesting life. You can watch this video of an interview with him. He actually wrote Haroun and the Sea of Stories for his young son, and so it's meant to be a children's book. Moving forward, an important term that we need to remember, which we've gone over in class, like I said, this is some of this is just review, but magical realism. This is a technique that Salman Rushdie uses, and it's a genre or style that incorporates fantastic or mythical elements into otherwise realistic fiction. So it's when you take something ordinary and you make it magical, which is kind of cool if you think about it. There's some other writers that use this technique. It's a popular literary technique, and it's a way of maybe making the world a little bit more interesting if you throw some magic in there. And sometimes the line between what's real and what's magic starts to blur a little bit, which this book is all about the imagination in that way. So, but moving forward, some of the main characters in Haroun and the Sea of Stories. You guys remember the Shah of Blah. He's one of the main characters. He's Haroun's father. He's married to Soraya. His real name is Rashid Khalifa, and people also call him the Ocean of Notions. And he's this famous storyteller. He's always coming up with imaginative stories and creative ideas and stuff like that. And he's just a real famous storyteller, and he's kind of modeled after Salman Rushdie, the author. But we'll see in the book he loses his ability to tell stories, which is one of the primary conflicts in Haroun and the Sea of Stories. Then we have, of course, Haroun, who is Rashid's son. He's a young, courageous, intelligent kid, just like you. And he goes on adventures with his dad. His mother is separated from his father, and one of his goals is to get his mother to come home. Haroun also has an attention span of 11 minutes, which I think is actually pretty impressive. I think most of us might have a attention span that's less than that. I know I certainly do sometimes, so good attention span. Soraya Khalifa is Haroun's mother and Rashid's wife. She used to love to sing, but she doesn't sing anymore. And she's getting kind of tired of her husband, the Shah of Blah, and all of his stories. She has this neighbor named Mr. Sengupta that she likes talking to instead, and she ends up leaving her family with Mr. Sengupta. You can see him there with the crazy pants and Soraya. But Haroun and Rashid miss her very much. Then we have Mr. Sengupta. Look at this guy. Boy, he looks like a wild dude. Mr. Sengupta hates imagination and storytelling. He's like the primary antagonist in the story. He's very stern and no fun allowed. If he hosted a study hall, it would definitely be a quiet study hall, believe me. Uh, he always says bad things about Rashid to Soraya and is always saying, oh, he's no good, this and that, and convinces Soraya to leave the sad city with him. And the sad city is our the setting where the book begins. Moving on, we have Miss Onita, who is Mr. Sengupta's wife. She's a very kind and caring person, and she tries to be a good neighbor, but Mr. Sengupta leaves her, and she ends up telling Rashid and Haroun about Soraya leaving, and she's pretty upset about it, so I don't blame her. You can see that this artist's interpretation of the two characters, they seem very different. One is colorful and looks like a much less stern person than Mr. Sengupta does in that drawing. The sandals with the suit, now that's a look, am I right? We have another character that comes up who has a strange name. His name is Mr. Butt. And Mr. Butt is a mailman and a bus driver for Haroun and Rashid. He's not a very good driver and can be kind of reckless and doesn't always take them where they want to go. He has other nicknames. Another nickname he has is Hoopo, or sometimes Butt the Hoopo. And here's an example where some magical realism comes in. He's supposed to be just an ordinary mailman and bus driver, but he transforms into a bird that Haroun and If the Water Genie fly across different lands with. So you can see how you take something ordinary like a bus driver or a mailman, and then you turn them into a bird. That might be an example of magical realism. There are some strange things that happen in this book, but as I've said before, I think in class, it's kind of like, think of it as like a dream. When you have a dream and it doesn't really make sense, but it's very colorful and everything kind of is enjoyable, like a really good dream. And there's lots of adventures and things sort of tie together, but not really. That's kind of how this book is. So don't worry if things seem confusing or odd in this book. That's part of the journey, I guess. Here's another picture of Mr. Butt, or Butt the Hoopo, dressed as a bird that an artist did. Cool, looks like Toucan Sam. Anyways, another character is Snooty Batu. He is a politician trying to get re-elected, and he tries to get Rashid, the Shah of Blah, to endorse him. And he wants the Shah of Blah to give this big speech about him, because he knows the Shah of Blah is a great storyteller and could make up a beautiful story about him. So, Rashid and Haroun board his fancy boat where Rashid's supposed to give this speech. And it turns out Rashid has lost his storytelling abilities. His storytelling abilities are only present when his relationship with Soraya is there. So once he loses his wife, he also loses his ability to tell stories. So that's one of the big themes, is that the storyteller can no longer tell stories, and he needs his son's help to get his powers back, and his wife and mother. Another important character. Look at that guy. Now that's a beard. Boy, I wish I had a beard like that. This is If the Water Genie. He is a mentor to Haroun. He has some magical powers, and he encourages Rashid's imagination. He does this by a kind of magical magical process that it says can't really be explained, but somehow involves a fountain, like a magic fountain, that he feeds Haroun's and Rashid's imagination through. He also has a blue mustache and beard. Pretty cool. So maybe you can kind of think of like the genie from Aladdin, sort of similar type of figure in the book. Okay, just to go over the first couple chapters. In the first chapter, Haroun lives with his father and mother in Aleph Bay, which is called the Sad City, where people are always crying because they're so sad. But Rashid is a famous storyteller, and he makes the city a little less sad with his stories. His wife leaves him for Sengupta. Rashid is hired to speak for a politician, but he can only say one word, arc. He just says arc, arc, arc. Why he says arc, I don't know. It seems strange, but that's all he can say. And so Haroun and Rashid decide to travel to the Valley of Kay with but the Hoopoe is going to take them there. That's the first. Second chapter, Haroun and Rashid travel on a bus driven by Mr. Butt through the mountains of M to the Valley of Kay, and they meet Snooty Buttu, who takes them aboard, who's really the same character, or who is the politician, I'm sorry, who takes them aboard the boat. Rashid still cannot find his voice, and there's a key quote here that all names mean something. And if you look in the back of the book, in the back of Haroun and the Sea of Stories, there's an explanation for each of the characters' names. This is on page 215. So you can see where the names come from and what their origins in and what words they relate to. So you could check that out on page 215. Moving on, chapter 3, the Dull Lake. The Dull Lake turns out to be the Moody Land, a place that changes weather with the mood of the people who live there. So this is another example of magical realism where maybe there's a place where people are unhappy or where weather changes a lot, but it has an actual effect on the mood of the people in a magical way in this example. So Haroun thinks about some happy memories, which changes the weather, and then he discovers a burglar with a blue beard who comes into the place he's staying, and it turns out to be If, the water genie, who gives him this tool called the disconnecting tool. And then the water genie agrees to take Haroun to Gup City to see this walrus who can give Rashid his storytelling abilities back. So the adventure moves very quickly. It's okay if you don't understand every little twist and turn, but that gives you an idea of what's happening at this point. And now it's time for you to read chapters 4 and 5. We'll go over them this week, and I'll provide you guys with some materials for that. Maybe a short writing assignment online that I will explain in email. But anyways, just like Haroun, our attention spans are maybe only about 11 minutes, so I don't want to keep this on too long. That's all for today. But thank you so much. Like I said, I'm thinking of you guys, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.